to the first of the 3 U.S.-China Agriculture Dialogue brought to you by the U.S. Heartland-China Association in close collaboration with our partners across the U.S. and China. My name is Min Fan, and I am the Executive Director of the U.S. Heartland-China Association, a bipartisan nonprofit committed to promoting healthy relations between the U.S. and China with a special focus on the American Heartland region we serve. Distinguished speakers, honored guests, and friends, 107 years ago on this day, in the small town of Cresco, Iowa, a boy was born. His name was Norman Borlaug, who went on to create high-yielding wheat varieties that is credited with saving over 1 billion people's lives worldwide. He received many awards for his work, including the Nobel Peace Prize, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and the Congressional Gold Medal. We picked this birthday to start this important dialogue because we believe that the global challenges our world faces today calls for innovators and visionaries of our time to lead and inspire like he did. Right now, right here, we have gathered some exceptional leaders from across the US and China to help us find the way forward through agriculture, from shared challenges to a shared future between the 2 largest economies of our world, US and China. To help kick off today's trade and business dialogue, we have with us 2 Heartland leaders. Iowa Secretary of Agriculture, Secretary Nag, Alabama Secretary of State, Secretary Merrill. Let's first hear Secretary Nag's recorded remarks, please.
Hi, I'm Iowa Secretary of Agriculture, Mike Nag, and I want to start by wishing you all a happy National Agriculture Week. During this annual event, we recognize the farmers and the ranchers who work hard to provide food, fuel, and fiber for all of us. I'm spending this week visiting agricultural communities around the state to thank them for their efforts and engaging in community service projects to help our neighbors. Agriculture is the backbone of Iowa's economy, and we're very proud of the products that we produce. Our farmers work hard to ensure that we can continue to provide high-quality pork, soybeans, beef, and other products to China. And conversations like these are an important way to identify ways that we can help meet your protein needs. We know that this is a global marketplace, and we're grateful for your business. Our mutually beneficial trading relationship with China and our long-standing relationship with our sister state, Hebei. Several years ago, I had an opportunity to participate in a trade mission to China, and I thoroughly enjoyed visiting the markets and tasting the cuisine and learning about consumer preferences. And I look forward to a time when I can visit the country again. And I thank you for your continued partnership, and I hope you have a very productive conversation today.
Thank you. Now let's welcome Secretary John Merrill to give his remarks. Secretary.
Thank you, Min, and thank you for the opportunity to address all of you today. On behalf of my home state of Alabama, I want to congratulate all of you and our distinguished speakers and honored guests for the significant dialogue taking place right here today. Many of you know that Alabama, and you know us for Space Command in Huntsville, the Port of Mobile, our football team, Roll Tide, and the Mercedes-Benz plant in Vance, Alabama, which I played a small part in recruiting back in 1993 as the Assistant Director of the Tuscaloosa County Industrial Development Authority. What many people do not know is that Alabama is also a significant exporter of chicken, peanuts, and chicken stock for China. Specifically relevant to today's event, one of the 3 scientists who are being recognized as inspirational for the U.S.-China Agricultural Roundtable is George Washington Carver, who developed the agricultural program at Tuskegee University. We are delighted that Dean Walter Hill, known as the modern-day Carver, will be speaking to the Ag Education Dialogue next week. In September of 2020, I was named the chairman of the Economic Development Committee for the U.S. Heartland-China Association. In that role, I have seen firsthand the significant role that a unique bipartisanship nonprofit organization that the USHCA can play in promoting US-China collaboration through exchanges in culture, education, and business. US-China Ag Roundtable is a great example of our work. Alabama is proud to participate in the United States Heartland China Association, and we are extremely grateful for the opportunities that have been provided for us and since we've been welcomed into the organization. The important work being conducted by USHCA is moving our state forward, and I am grateful to work with all of you in identifying innovative solutions, building relationships, and strengthening these ties between our states, regions, and nations. I wish you much success and look forward to outstanding dialogue today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Secretary Merrill. Now, to lead us through the rest of the program is Jim Schultz, our board member and Agriculture Committee Chair and the founder of Open Prairie. Jim is an agribusiness entrepreneur, private equity executive, and a recognized leader throughout the state of Illinois. I will now turn this over to Jim. Jim? Jim, are you muted?
Min, yeah, thank you. It's nice to be with everyone. To my friends in China, good morning, and to my friends here in the US, good evening. It's good to be with all of you. I reflected on today before the presentation. 38 years ago, I lived in Hong Kong and studied at the University of Hong Kong Law School and had the opportunity to travel to Beijing, at the time called Peking, and spent time up there learning about the culture and the opportunities for doing business. And I went back twice on trade missions, once as the chairman of the Illinois Chamber of Commerce, and then a second time a few years ago as the Secretary of Commerce for the state of Illinois. And the transformation of China in those 38 years has been incredible. I only hope the next 38 years create even more opportunity, and as Min said, for a shared future between our two countries. Today, I have the honor of leading a panel of 6 distinguished individuals that have a deep background in agriculture. Krista Harden is the president and CEO of U.S. Dairy Export Council. Mr. Luan is the president of COFCO. And they will be speaking in this order. Polly Rulan is the chief executive officer of the United Soybean Board. Mr. Wan is the general manager of CNA DC. Bill Evan is the CEO of National Pork Board. And Ms. Liu is the president and CEO of CCIC Chicago. Well, what we're going to do today is each of them will give remarks of 5 to 7 minutes, and then we'll wrap up with about a 20-minute Q&A session. If you have questions as well, please use the chat or Q&A function, and we'll try to get to those questions as well. But at this point, I'll turn it to Krista Harden to give her comments and thoughts about opportunities for us to work together between our two countries. Krista?
Thank you very much, Jim, and hello to everyone, and good day to our friends in China, and good evening to my fellow Americans. Almost bedtime in some parts of the country, maybe mine. I look forward to so much time when we have these kind of discussions in person. But before we are able to do that, it's great that we can at least get together and share important information and ideas and talk about the relationship between our great countries. US DEC, US Dairy Export Council is what that acronym stands for. And the slide you're looking at is our new mission statement. And there are a couple of key points here that I think are worth noting. As the leading dairy export success accelerator. For us, that means progress, that means moving forward. We want to enrich the well-being of people, communities, and the planet. And I think that with dairy is a product that's very good for people, health and wellness. It's also about sustainability, about producing our products in a sustainable way, and also being a good neighbor, being a good employer. working with our communities. So this kind of sums up our philosophy and the direction we hope to be going in the future. Next slide, please. Dairy China is a big market for dairy. There's no doubt. On the next slide, you'll see that it's the third market for us. And it really has been about our ingredients. That's where we are advancing and accelerating in a number of key areas here. And hopefully you'll be able to dig a little deeper on some of these areas, but certainly talking about product, nutrition, and education, the innovation, the ideas that what consumers want and how we can meet them in the marketplace. And I mentioned sustainability, about producing our products in a lasting way, making sure we're also good for the planet. Those are kind of key elements that really do drive our relationship and our exports to China. Next slide, please. Here shows, as I mentioned, that China is a very, very key market for U.S. dairy, number 3. A market that has been growing, a market that is important to us, and one that we would like to see improve over time. Next slide, please. You know, this is a slide that shows the true story of what's happened with tariffs. And when you see some dips in this graph because of the tariffs, you see some recovery, but the tariffs took a toll. There is absolutely no doubt. So as you look at these numbers and the recovery, you can see that we are making progress. Things are coming back, but it was a very, very tough, difficult process for U.S. dairies through the tariffs. Next slide, please. What do we sell in China? Well, you can see the big red bar. I think it tells a story in itself that our dry whey products are certainly the leading product for us to China. Lactose is starting to grow. Obviously, China is the biggest market for whey in the world, about 40%, I believe, of total. So it's no doubt that it would be a big market for us as well. But we would love to see some of these other bars, these other colors increase as well. But whey, I like to call whey our workhorse in the relationship with China. Next slide, please. This just shows a little bit of our competitors and what we do in the marketplace. Some of these figures and numbers will be of no surprise to many of you, but you can see the U.S. there in the red. We would like to see that increasing, and we'll talk more about that throughout the program. But it is a really a critical market for us and continues to be, and over time we hope to be even more important. The next slide, please. Now, one thing that we have done is really to try to join forces and build partnerships in country, to have programs that will help us spur product development, looking at what the Chinese consumer wants and their demand for health and well-being products. That's a growing area, and we know that we can help meet that. I mean, working with the Chinese Institute of Food Science and Technology, working on different prototypes and different products that might be meet that growing demand. So we're very excited about working together to build those partnerships to find answers for your consumers. Next slide, please. This is you can click through this. As I was talking about this, I should have advanced, and I apologize. Just good pictures. There you go. Thank you. Dairy permeate for food innovation is a great hope for us. It's very exciting. It's rich in lactose and milk minerals. When it's added, really it adds flavor, so there's less need for added salts and sodium. So we really do think that having permeate for food is something that could be very exciting and a good market for us, and the consumers will enjoy. Next slide, please. Here is just more of working directly with our partners in country, making sure that we are meeting the consumers at where their needs are, where their demands are, and working with Chinese food and beverage manufacturers to make sure it's in the proper language and cultural approaches are correct. So we appreciate the opportunity to continue to advance these relationships. Next slide, please. I'm so sorry. I was gone there for a moment. I apologize. We've had a great partnership with Yuan University that we started. We signed an MOU in 2018, and it's really has been a great relationship and continues to grow. We continue to have a great relationship with students working on different products, developing great ideas there. You can see pictures of some of our relationship with students. I'm really excited about these relationships and what they might be in the future. Next slide, please. So how do we get to tomorrow? You know, we really hope for a long-term partnership. As I mentioned, China's our third largest market. We would love to see that grow. We know that the Chinese consumer wants, you know, a stable, reliable partner, and so do we. We want the same. So we're looking for permanent tariff relief. We're looking for relationships that are consistent, that we can count on both sides of the partnership. So I look forward to hearing from my colleagues and others, as well as addressing questions in a few moments. So thank you.
Thank you, Krista. That was very informative. I should have mentioned at the front end of today's first topic is about expanding protein trade. And then the second section that'll be in about an hour, we'll talk about adopting new technologies. So today, the six panelists with us now are focused on expanding protein trade between our countries. So with no further ado, I'm going to now turn it to Mr. Luan to talk a little bit about things at COFCO and what they're doing as far as promoting protein trade. Mr. Luan.
栾总，您这边请打开麦克风。
各位嘉宾，大家早上好，也晚上好。非常高兴应邀参加本次论坛，并就推动中美农业合作、扩大蛋白质相关农产品这个议题我们来进行交流和研讨。中粮集团是中国最大的综合性的全产业链的农粮食品企业。我们积极加强与全球各国合作伙伴农产品经贸合作，致力于为消费者提供多元化的、高品质的、营养健康的粮油食品。农产品贸易合作一直都是中美经贸合作的重要组成部分之一。建交40多年来，两国农业合作领域不断拓宽，内容不断深化，中美的农产品贸易快速发展，对两国产业结构调整、农产品市场丰富起到了重要的促进作用，不仅惠及双方，同时也促进了双边的贸易向更加平衡的方向发展。中国是全球最大的农产品进口国，进口额约占全球农产品贸易额的1/10。2020年，中国主要农产品进口总量达到1.7亿吨，进口额超过了1700亿美元。美国是全球农产品生产和出口的大国，1/3的农产品用于了出口。中美两国农业互补性强，是天然的农业合作伙伴，应该说具有十分广阔的合作空间。2013年到17年，中国自美农产品进口大约稳定在200亿美元以上，占中国农产品进口额的20%以上。2018到19年，受经贸摩擦的影响，这一比例下滑到了10%左右。2020年1月，中美签署了第一阶段的贸易协议，双方农业经贸合作快速恢复。2020年，中国自美农产品进口额达到了235亿美元，比2019年增长67%，占中国农产品进口总额的14%左右。随着中国城镇化进程的加快推进和人民生活水平的不断提高，中国消费增长和消费结构升级将继续推动优质农产品需求大幅增加。 为满足人民日益增长的美好生活需要，中国对农产品的进口规模还将进一步的扩大，其中以大豆、肉类、乳制品为代表的蛋白质占有很大的比重。2020年的新冠肺炎疫情，尽管给全球农产品的供应链带来了一定的冲击，但是中国对大豆、肉类和乳制品的进口量仍然保持了良性的增长。2020年，中国大豆进口总量突破了1亿吨，同比增长了13%，其中从美国进口2589万吨，同比增长了53%，肉类进口总量近1000万吨，同比增长了60%，其中从美国进口146万吨，同比增长了2倍以上。乳制品进口总量340万吨，同比增长10%，其中从美国进口35万吨，同比增长40%。中国庞大且持续增长的内需市场将会为美国农产品生产者和供应商提供广阔的发展空间，为两国农业和经贸的合作长期稳定发展提供更大的机遇。中粮集团作为中国农粮食品行业的领军企业，一直致力于推动中美的经贸关系发展，特别是在农粮领域的务实合作。我们在1973年从美国进口第一单小麦，从那开始40多年，中粮与美国的贸易伙伴始终保持了良好的业务合作。我们2020年主动克服疫情带来的不利影响，积极加大对美农产品的采购力度，以实际行动来支持中美两国达成的合作共识。全年累计签约采购大豆、玉米、小麦、高粱、棉花、猪肉等农产品达2500万吨，同比增长2.5倍，采购金额84亿美元，同比增长1.4倍，其中大豆采购量909万吨，同比增长49%。下一步，中粮集团将持续推进与美国优秀农粮食品企业的深度合作，基于市场化原则和 WTO 的规则，积极引进与中国消费需求高度互补的美国优质农产品，持续拓宽合作领域，将美国先进的农业生产能力与中国庞大的消费市场需求有机的连接在一起，促进双边贸易向更加平衡的方向来发展。展望未来，中美经贸关系是最大发展中国家和最大发达国家间的双边经贸关系。稳定健康的中美经贸关系是两国人民和国际社会的共同的期盼。中粮集团愿与美方企业一道，持续加强农业领域的经贸合作，让中国的消费者和美国的农业生产者在合作中切实受益，真正实现互利共赢，为推动中美经贸关系的稳定健康发展，为维护全球粮食安全体系做出新的贡献，注入新的能量。谢谢各位。
Thank you, Mr. Luan. It's very, very informative, and agreed, we need to continue to find the shared future, as we noted earlier. And now I'm going to turn to Polly Ruland with the United Soybean Board to give some comments. Polly?
Thank you, Jim. Good morning or good evening, wherever you are. And thank you for the opportunity to participate in this important discussion on agriculture transformation through improved cultural understanding toward a shared future. The US and China have a rich history and symbiotic relationship related to agriculture and trade in soybeans. Free-flowing trade is critical to both the economic growth and improved livelihoods of global populations and our soybean industries. Together, the US and China can continue to collaborate to identify factors like improving citizen welfare and nutrition, improving economic conditions, and addressing the growing needs for protein in our countries. Next slide, please. To expand protein trade and lift up the nutrition and well-being of peoples and nations around the world, the US and China must prioritize understanding each other and shared values, which include free and open trade, quality, and sustainability. As both countries work toward meeting purchase requirements outlined in the US-China Phase 1 trade agreement, market access is mission critical. Cultural understanding can prevent trade barriers and reduce tariffs. US agriculture, and particularly an important high quality and sustainable soybean crop, offer reliability, consistency, and quality to China. China's growing interest in sustainability widens an opportunity for the US to supply this important market with sustainable and high quality soybean protein. Next slide, please. For US soy, our priority markets extend far and wide, including China, but also beyond. Bilateral trade between the US and China not only strengthens ties between our two nations, but also helps to supply other markets around the world with valuable agricultural commodities, including soybeans. The US and China have benefited from a trade relationship for nearly 40 years. Since this valued partnership began, many of China's industries have grown to become some of the largest in the world. International markets, including China, depend on the US's high-quality soybeans for food, for feed, for fuel, and fiber. In fact, China is almost 90% reliant on imported soybeans to meet domestic demand and has been for almost the last 10 years. After all soybean genetics originated in China, so all of our farmers in the US have China to thank for our high quality products. Today, China represents 60% of world trade on soybeans and about 65% of US soybean exports. In short, China is an extremely important market for US soybean farmers. We see global demand for protein continuing to rise significantly, despite past and current system shocks related to animal disease. Through pork and soybean trade with the US agriculture and US soybean farmers are important to China's economic recovery post-African swine flu and both of our long-term growth and development. Frankly, we need each other. Next slide, please. China's middle class is growing, much like the rest of the world. China contributes to the global growth of the middle class. Reports show more than 1.5 billion people will be added to the middle class by 2030. I am impressed and appreciative of the modernization efforts China is and has been implementing throughout its ag supply chain. State-of-the-art hog facilities, genetic and germplasm enhancement, land aggregation and scaling, digital agriculture, and many more. Globalization has contributed to a declining number of people living in poverty around the world. People are living longer and are eating more. As populations are lifted out of poverty, people have more disposable income to spend on high-quality, nutrient-dense food like protein. This creates an opportunity for plant and animal proteins and fulfills a need for protein in numerous markets around the world. At the same time, to meet its continually growing demand and ensure structural food security, China continues to take care of itself through modernization and upscaling. However, in the case of soybeans, even as advancements integrate into Chinese systems of production, there is still a large gap and China still needs soybeans. In the past 30 years, the gap has grown in percentage and absolute terms. The US now produces over 50 bushels an acre, and that is the beauty and the necessity of international trade, the abilities for countries with more to share, serve, and export to markets that need our food. Next slide, please. By 2050, our world population will reach an estimated 9.7 people, which is a staggering number on its own. But when you recognize that a greater share of the people of the world, that the people of the world will add between now and then will be in the middle class, the future demand for plant protein as well as animal protein will be significantly higher than today. To nourish our people, we must prioritize cross-industry collaboration and free-flowing trade between our two countries. This rests in cultural understanding and respect regarding societal differences between our countries and our people. This plays a fundamental role in successful trade into the future. Actively seeking and acknowledging our similarities and our mutual goals will facilitate important trade relationships. Next slide, please. Through a focus on market access and shared understanding, we can be proactive and reactive to market needs, maintain our long-standing relationships, manage system shocks and crises effectively to avoid long-term damage, safeguard the opportunities we have together, advocate for relevant policy, and foster our interests and that of China in future markets. Thank you.
Polly, thank you for those comments. I'm now going to turn to Mr. Yun, the General Manager and member of the Board of Directors of China National Agricultural Development Group. Mr. Yun.
Wan总，
好，尊敬的主持人，尊敬的各位嘉宾，大家好，非常感谢这次论坛。
万总，请稍等，您的 PPT， Jolanda, please PPT。
啊。好。
第一张，PPT。
第一张
PPT，
请放到第一张。
这是最后。
Back one step。
第一张，对。
这个不是，这是最后一张。对。
好。
好，对。
尊敬的主持人，尊敬的各位嘉宾，大家好，非常感谢这次论坛提供的交流平台。我很荣幸代表中国农业发展集团在论坛上进行交流发言，分享中国农业发展集团在农业转型过程中的做法，探讨中美农业领域的合作。中国农业正处于转变农业发展方式、推进农业供给侧结构性改革的重要时期，有3个重要转变值得关注。首先，中国农产品供给在由量多向质优转变。过去，我国农业重在强调产量、规模、种植面积和价格。因为中国作为发展中国家，人口基数庞大，保障粮食安全至关重要。近些年来，随着我国农业产业的快速发展和人民生活水平的不断提高，市场对农产品的需求已经逐步由量多向质优转变。其次，中国农业生产由传统的农业向智慧农业转变，中国农业产业新型经营主体和经营模式不断涌现，现代互联网技术、信息技术如农业深度融合，我们很高兴的看到，很多中国农业企业已经做出了示范，也有美国、欧洲等发达国家的农业科技企业与中国企业开展了多领域的合作。第三，中国农产品贸易国际化程度显著提高。我们看到，当前中国的大豆主要依赖进口，动物蛋白质贸易进口品种和规模也在快速的增长。比如从欧盟、巴西、美国等国家或地区进口的猪肉、牛肉总量很大。从长期看，肉类、乳品等蛋白进口还将继续处于上涨的趋势。农产品进出口贸易仍将保持扩大开放的态势。 中国农业发展集团作为一个综合性国际化的农业企业，一直在不断探索如何继续积极的促进中国农业转型发展，更好的参与全球农产品供应链的建设。第二页，中国农发集团是一家综合性农业企业，业务涉及远洋渔业、畜牧业、种业种植业、农业机械装备等领域。从战略定位来看，中国农业发展集团 PPT 第二页集团产业可以从2个层面来讲，一方面是对优质健康农产品的供应，这其中包含2层意思，一是集团拥有远洋渔业、国内外种植基地、乳业生产等产业形态，从事农牧渔业资源的开发，通过相对完整的产业链为国内国际市场提供优质健康的农牧渔产品。二是蛋白进口贸易，包括鱼粉、乳清粉等动物用的蛋白贸易，如油肉、猪肉、水产、乳糖、乳清蛋白粉等人用的蛋白贸易，贸易产量丰富，贸易国别多元。未来以水产、肉类和乳品为主的蛋白进口将保持较高的规模，满足国内日益增长的市场需求。另一方面是对农业现代化生产的综合服务。中国农业发展集团具有兽用疫苗、兽药、农作物种业、农机装备等产业。一是在畜牧业领域，集团兽用生物制药产业在保障动物疫病防治和养殖行业安全方面发挥了积极作用，在不断提升重点产品科技水平的基础上，抓好产品技术和服务的基层，针对不同类别的养殖企业和养殖户提供全套系统的解决方案。二是在种植业领域，集团着力构建农业综合服务体系，以农作物种业为核心，集合种子、农药、化肥、农机等关键资源，通过延伸产业链服务，连接农民和市场，打造农业综合服务平台，全面提升农业生产的质量和效益。中美携手推动，下一页 PPT 下一页，中美携手推动全球贸易和农业转型，不仅惠及2国人民，而且惠及全球。美国在农业生产方面高效，并具有相对质量优势，自由开放的贸易、可持续提供供应等优势，为中美2国农业的合作奠定了坚实基础。长期以来，中美农业合作保持了良好的发展势头，农产品贸易和稳定发展惠及2国企业和人民。中国农业发展集团涉及蛋白贸易范围广、品类多、渠道广，我们已同美国、欧洲开展了相关的贸易。在动物蛋白方面，主要是豆粕、鱼粉、乳清粉等；在人用蛋白方面，主要是水产品、肉类、乳品等。中国农业发展集团十分乐见在现有业务基础上进一步拓展中美双方的农业领域合作的广度和深度。我们相信，在中美抗击疫情、应对全球气候变化、推动世界经济复苏方面开展合作的背景下，中美农业合作将进一步打开大门，未来双方会进一步拓展合作的广度和深度。中国农业发展集团对国际合作始终抱着开放的态度，希望能和美国农业企业拓展和深化合作，既包括农产品贸易上的业务合作，也包括农业科技和资本投资领域的合作，为推动2国农产品贸易和农业转型发展做出更大的贡献。谢谢大家。
Mr. Yuan, thank you. Very interesting comments, and I particularly liked your comment about opening the doors, and we need to open them wide because there's so much opportunity, and we think USHCA and agriculture combined can be the leading opportunity. So loved your comments. At this point, I'm going to turn to Bill Evan with the National Pork Board to give some comments about what he sees as a vision an opportunity for trade in protein.
Thank you, Jim. Ni hao, hello, good morning, or good evening, depending on where you're at. It's a pleasure to be here with you. And I represent the United States 60,000 pork producers. And I also happen to be a farmer myself. Our family raises corn, soybeans, and beef in particular. And my message here this evening is that we're business people and we're interested in conducting business. I have 3 slides that I wish to show you and really drive home the fact that China and the United States have a great opportunity for continuing long-term trade relationships in all types of protein. I will speak specifically about pork this evening. So on the next slide, you will see China's need for protein. And the photo is an example of some of the modernization that Mr. Wan had discussed. China is rapidly modernizing its livestock production, following in the footsteps of much of the United States or the Western world. This is important because a country with nearly 1.4 billion people deserves to be fed high quality protein, whether it's raised by the Chinese or imported from countries such as the United States. Now, speaking of China's need for protein, we're all aware of the African swine fever in China and other parts of Europe. And this has caused a huge protein gap in China. And that has had huge implications on global pork trade, as well as soybean and corn trade in particular. Inside of China, we're well aware of the price of pork, and those record profits are providing the capital necessary to drive new investments back into Chinese pork production, modernizing your supply chain, but in particular for meat, making sure that the cold chain or refrigeration is extended throughout your nation. That will certainly ensure high quality animal protein to be able to be shipped from the coast deep inland into China. So China is the largest importer of pork and beef in the world. China represents 55% of global pork trade. For the United States, in 2018, we sold China around 570 million US dollars worth of pork. But last year alone in 2020, that number jumped to $2.3 billion US in trade in pork. In fact, 10% of US pork production was sold to China, both in the form of pork cuts as well as in pork variety meats. And speaking of variety meats, China is the top customer for US pork variety meats. Many of the things that Chinese and other Asian cultures enjoy are things that we do not necessarily eat in the United States. So this reciprocal trade agreement that we have in place with phase 1 is a great step forward, and we look forward to continuing that into the future. So on the next slide, I want to show you some of the research that our organization, the National Pork Board, conducted in 2019 regarding China. We did a comprehensive qualitative and quantitative research in China around the pork industry and protein in general, called Pork 2040. We did this as business people to understand what did the China market look like and what were those opportunities for investments in improving our trade relationship. So you can see on the chart on the right-hand side of the screen, the top bar in black is total protein consumed by China from the years 2009 on the left to the year 2025 on the right. The next line below, also in black with the diamonds, is total meat consumed by China. And in the chart that you saw from both Krista Harden and comments from Polly Ruland, all indicated that the global pandemic and African swine fever both combined to really drastically change our trading relationships. The slowdown in Chinese protein consumption due to African swine fever and the associated price inflationary pressures inside of China really took a toll on China's consumption of protein. And we are as interested as you are, about recovering China's protein consumption, be it in the form of pork or beef or dairy products or any other type of animal protein. We're interested in trading with you, and we believe that over time, as you rebuild your economy and you rebuild after African swine fever, there still is going to be an opportunity for the United States to be a good trading partner with China in the area of pork. On the next slide, we work closely with our colleagues at the U.S. Meat Export Federation in China, helping provide training seminars, education, and research so that Chinese cooks, consumers, both modern retail and the secondary warehouse retail, understand how to use U.S. pork in your diet. China is a valuable trading partner for U.S. pork, and we intend to be a competitive supplier to your nation. Our short-term strategy is very simple. We are here to help fill that protein gap that you are experiencing. The sales numbers that I referred to earlier are an example of that. Our long-term strategy is to focus on value-added opportunities. We wish to be a 52-week-a-year supplier to the Chinese market. We see a real opportunity in the area of chilled pork, other than on top of frozen. And while these cold chain opportunities haven't yet developed, these are areas that we wish to collaborate with you on in the future. And as Krista Harden and Polly Rulin both indicated, and Jim, this will be something we can talk about during our Q&A session. The opportunity to lower trade barriers in the form of tariff, the opportunity to ensure that COVID testing on packages and shipments into China, the opportunity to ensure that our production plants are listed and able to sell and conduct trade with China are important. And the inclusion of processed meats in the the phase 1 agreement with China have all been very incredibly important and have really helped boost that trade. With that, I would conclude my remarks, and I would look forward to our conversation during the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Bill, thanks. And again, your comment about us being business people and bringing business leaders together to try to find solutions is spot on. So with that, I'm going to turn to Ms. Liu, the president of CCIC Chicago. Ms. Liu.
刘总，您可以开始讲了。
好，尊敬的各位女士们、先生们，大家好，我是来自中国检验认证集团芝加哥公司的刘新磊。今天特别荣幸能有这个机会和大家在这里交流，也给我这个机会向您介绍一下 CCIC。下一页，谢谢。下一个幻灯片。CCIC 是中国检验认证集团的一个简称，我们是一个独立的第三方机构，以检验认证测试为主业。我们在全球拥有近300家的分支机构，服务网络遍及世界主要的城市、港口和货物集散地。在海外呢，我们跟主要的贸易伙伴都有我们的分支机构。在中国的大陆，我们的运营网点就更加的完善，大概有200多家，遍布全中国所有的省份。所以说，就在中国而言，服务网点的数量是所有全球的大型检验认证机构都无法比肩的。如果您是和中国做生意， CCIC 应该是您非常明智的一个选择。再往下，下一页，下一页，听得见吗？再往下，这2个图片过后再翻下一页，对，再下一页。这是我们那个网点的分布图。就中检芝加哥而言，我们已经成功的在美国运行了20多年。由于我们对中国的一个法规环境和国际贸易制度的一个双重的理解，所以我们对自己的定位是助力中美贸易顺畅开展的一个桥梁和纽带。 我现在觉得和我们这个协会的这个概念是非常相近的。下一页。下一页能听见吗？好，那我们的主要的作用就是促进双方的贸易的一个顺畅化。我们致力于把中国的产品带到美国去，也把美国的产品带到中国来。下面就是说，从美国到中国的产品，我们能提供的服务是列了4项，其中第一个是大宗农产品的进出口服务，这个业务是一个非常成熟的业务。我不用向大家介绍说我们能做什么，我只想向大家说我们为什么有优势。当然，我们的优势是非常多的。我在这里只想说一点，就是别人学不来的优势，是由于我们对于中国市场获得，就是中国政府对于大宗农产品的一个质量要求和风险控制的一个深刻的理解和精准的把控。我们是有专门的团队来跟进这些要求和变化，我们会帮助我们的客户来满足要求、适应变化，从而把产品顺利的出口到中国去。第二个是中国市场准入的法规咨询。中国市场是一个很大的，而且是不断升级的市场。想要在中国市场取得成功的第一步是您得知道怎么进入中国市场。中国有很多产品进入中国市场之前是有一些门槛的，就是比如说跟咱们今天相关的一个产品，比如说婴幼儿配方奶粉，比如说宠物食品、饲料添加剂、膳食补充剂这些，在你进入中国之前是需要到相关部门进行备案注册的。这方面我们可以给您提供专业的法律法规咨询服务。第三个就是履行驻中国办事处的各种职能。原来的国际旅行可能就比较昂贵，现在由于疫情呢，它既昂贵又困难，但是我们的贸易呢又要正常的进行，所以如果您在中国有任何需要进行的一些商务活动，我们都可以给您提供帮助，从参加展会啊、商务谈判啊，到口岸的那个扣货的一个协调，到和供应商的审核等等都是可以的。第四个是向中国消费者致信的防伪溯源服务，这个我想花一点时间跟大家解释一下，请下一页幻灯片。下一页幻灯片，就是美国的消费者是没有在购物的时候扫码溯源的这个习惯，但是中国的消费者是比较喜欢这样去扫码了解这个产品。我们现在可以向就是需要扫码的产品、溯源的产品贴了这个标签，底下这个就是我们的一个标签的示意。它的好处是我们可以证明这是美国生产制造的，它是在流通环节全部受控的，而且能够防止假冒伪造。还有一个最重要的一点就是它能获得一个差异化的竞争优势，因为不论中国和美国产品进口到别的国家的产品，它的标签都是受法规限制的，它的是以格式化的东西，你必须得写它要求的东西。所以消费者在面临很多种选择的时候，他很难精准的选择到他想要的东西。但是贴了我们这个标签之后呢，他一扫码，他就会把您想要告诉消费者的信息直接的推送给消费者。比如说，我们的乳制品是它的蛋白质含量非常高，或者是它有什么特别利于吸收，它的配方怎么样，你都可以向消费者来解释。所以这个是一个让您获得差异化竞争优势的一个非常好的方法。让产品能够脱颖而出。下一页。反过来说，从中国到美国的产品，我们也是主要有4大类。一个是美国市场的准入法规咨询，美国市场进入美国市场和进入中国市场一样，也有很多产品是有限制条件的，食品、药品、化妆品等等，我们提供相类似的进入美国市场的法规咨询。第二个是食品出口美国整体解决方案。在中国大概有8000到1万家的食品出口企业是出口美国的，在 FDA 备案成功的，所以我们提供他们全套的服务，从美国的代理人到低酸产品的备案，到 FDA 的注册，到外国供应商的验证方案等等一系列的方案。如果您有这方面的需求，可以联系我们。第三个就是履行驻美国办事处的各种职能。这个就跟中国办事处一样，中国企业想要到美国来的各种商务活动，我们都可以协助您来完成。第四个是购买或授权使用品，就是中国制造产品的质量控制服务。这个我也想花一点点时间跟大家介绍一下，请翻下一个幻灯片。因为 下一个幻灯片，因为美国呢其实是从中国购买了非常大量的产品，家电、玩具啊、服装啊等等，还有就是美国的品牌方呢，其实在中国也授权了很多的企业来生产他们的产品。那相应的质量控制，其实我们做的就非常好，我们可以去替您去做生产企业的资质核实，去做现场的质量监督监控，去做原辅料的质量控制，去做装运前的检验，去做您合同中要求的所有的一系列的服务。我对我们这个服务的理解就是，按照您的要求，就像您亲自前往一样，但是成本更低，这个专业化的人员能够做得更好，这是我们对这项服务的一个总结。那下一页。其实我的整个的介绍就是这么多，因为今天时间非常有限，所以没有说的特别透彻。我们还有其他的，比如说一些认证业务，对东南亚和中国亚洲的一些认证业务等等，包括一些钢铁啊等等的业务，包括刚才说的新冠病毒的检测业务，其实我是没有写在上面。如果大家有兴趣，可以联系我们，这是我的一个微信和我的电话号码。谢谢大家，今天非常高兴能认识大家，谢谢。
Mrs. Liu, thank you. And the traceability is a kind of a nice segue to a little bit more discussion about how we can expand opportunities together. I'd first turn to Krista to maybe talk a little bit about what you're seeing in your industry and dairy on new trends, products, opportunities that you're aware of or that are emerging that could become significant opportunities for expanding protein trade. And I'm going to ask each of the panelists to comment on this. Krista, I'll turn to you first.
Thank you. Well, I think there's a lot of opportunities out there. I think consumers are asking for new products, certainly with proteins for health and wellness products. They're looking for more handy type products that they can put in a bag on the go, whether it's in a liquid form in a smoothie or in a protein bar. Certainly things that are very easy to transport, but have that energy source, that protein source. You see more and more demands for these type of packaging. Stable milk, stable shelf life for milk is another product you're starting to see consumers talk about. They want the protein products that are easy, good for them, but easy to use. So I think that we're going to have a lot of innovation in these products over the coming years.
Thank you, Kristen. And Mr. Luan, same question as far as COFCO and new opportunities, new products, new trends that might be opportunistic for expanding protein trade.
谢谢主持人。我认为啊，这个在我们中国啊，从2个方面可以说啊，在蛋白质方面的这个需求啊，会不断的扩大。首先从这个宏观政策的角度来看，中国政府啊，应该说是高度重视人民生活水平的这个提高。最近发布了中国的“十四五”规划，当中就提到了要保障重要农产品、副食品的供应充足。这里面当然就包括了蛋白质的产品。在这方面呢，加上我们国家一直在扩大开放啊，这个对进口蛋白质啊这个农产品应该创造了非常好的外部环境啊。第二呢，从市场的情况来看，我们国家因为这个经济发展，生活水平不断提高，居民的饮食结构也在发生了重要的变化。以前我们是这个结构啊，是粮食、蔬菜和肉类的比例是8:1:1，现在演变为4:3:3啊，也就是肉类的需求啊，应该说是大幅的提升啊，大幅的提升，粮食的比例在下啊。那么我刚才已经讲到了，我们去年的进口肉类是非常之大的啊。展望未来，我认为中国对肉跟奶的需求，应该说还会进一步的增长。我们现在这个中产阶级啊，已经达到了4亿人啊。随着经济的发展， 这个比例还要再提升，特别是年轻人对于肉蛋奶的这个消费的喜好也越来越强。所以这2点说明中国对蛋白质食品的需求机遇非常大我是这么一个看法谢谢主持人。
Thank you, Mr. Luan. You know, as I shift to poly in soybeans, I've invested in soybean seed businesses before. There's really some fascinating things happening. Polly, I'm intrigued to hear what your thoughts are on opportunities in new products, new trends in soybeans.
Yeah, I'll speak to it from a slightly different angle. Not only do we have many new products in development that use plant protein as the primary source that are food products for people, but I also see another aspect to the protein demand globally, and that is we are continuously finding new uses for soybeans in products other than food. For example, the United Soybean Board is invested in replacing petroleum-based plastics with soy-based plastics that are more sustainable and eminently more biodegradable than a petroleum-based plastic. Because these types of products use the oil in soybeans, we still must have a significant demand globally for the meal in soybeans that traditionally has been most of the value in the bean. But in the future, that might shift a little bit as we use more and more oil on products that are more sustainable and environmentally friendly. I also see protein as a global category, meaning many times we have seen protein as perhaps competitive between plant, animal, and dairy protein, animal meat and dairy protein. But in reality, the global growth of population means that there is a place for all kinds of protein in the world as we march toward the population in 2050. So when we think about countries in various stages of development, of economic development, I do see that that the demand for protein overall, including new plant protein products, will grow and that there will be room for all in the category. So I see it a little bit differently in that soybeans, I call them the magic bean because we can use them for almost anything and we can make almost any product more sustainable, renewable, and degradable.
Great, Polly. And you know, the point you made about soy as a biodegradable or a bioplastic opportunity, we have seen some of that with soy starch, and I do think that's a fascinating area. Mr. Wan, I'd ask you the same question about opportunities, new products, new trends that you're seeing at CNADC as far as expansion of protein trade between our countries. Any thoughts on that?
啊，非常感谢你的提问。这个，我们认为啊，这个我国，这个蛋白质资源的匮乏，现在我们国家啊，总的来讲，我们是资源是匮乏的蛋白质，植物蛋白和动物蛋白均需进口，其中植物蛋白主要是以饲料为主，弥补动物的这个饲料的粮食啊，解决人需增粮突出的问题。动物蛋白呢，主要是以肉类和乳制品为主，弥补国民的营养需要，解决肉类产能不足的问题，这是一条。第二个是我国的这个蛋白贸易不平衡，国家一方面鼓励农业企业调整产业结构，提高产能，另一方面不断优化农产品贸易结构，鼓励农产品进口多元化，支持企业融入全球农产品贸易供应链。三是中国农发集团自身产业结构覆盖面广，涉及优质农产品供应和现代农业综合服务，在完善产业结构、提高服务能力方面有很多机遇。同时呢，中国农发集团呢还涉及这个蛋白贸易范围广、品类多、渠道这个广，这个在前面已经说了。 我们呢也将根据全球市场供需变化，持续的调整优化。谢谢。
Thank you. And Mr. Wan, I think the channels that you've developed is certainly an opportunity for U.S. businesses to develop more trade opportunities. So I welcome those comments. Thank you. Bill, now turn to you, and I'd love to hear thoughts on new trends in pork. You touched upon a little bit in your earlier comments, but maybe we can go a little deeper here.
Well, thank you, Jim. Thanks for that question. Regarding pork, I would say probably two things. I mentioned the opportunity for chilled pork into China. Currently, we ship a lot of chilled pork to Japan and to South Korea. So the shipping and supply chains and the short timelines with modern day ocean freight are really conducive to having fresh product, in this case chilled, delivered into Chinese ports. We view that as a real opportunity as China looks to raise its protein standards for its population. The other point I would touch on is work that we're doing in the US pork industry around the concept of a carbon neutral pig. In other words, the pork industry, or a pig that is actually net negative really in producing greenhouse gas emissions. When you look at US Environmental Protection Agency data, the pork industry contributes about a little less than 0.5% of greenhouse gas emissions in the United States. And that's taken into account our work with polyruland at soybeans, as well as our friends in the US corn industry. So we're really close as a nation to be able to meet sustainability and climate change goals that are important to the Chinese people and the American people. I know Krista Harden in dairy is along a similar path. I saw Eric Freewald from Syngenta pop on earlier, and some of the work that you've recently announced at dairy with Syngenta. There is real investment in technology and metrics and measuring of life cycle analysis of US agricultural products. You may not hear a lot about it, but that work is well underway. And the people that you have on from the United States here, in the form of Polly and Krista, are working the same as we are in the pork industry to ensure that we're going to bring consumers in China or anywhere else in the world a product they should feel guiltless about consuming.
Great, Bill. And the carbon neutral aspect of pork production is fascinating. And a day doesn't pass that we aren't at our company talking about the carbon sequestering and the carbon measurement and other things like that in this nascent opportunity we all are trying to figure out. So we really welcome those comments. Thank you. And finally, Ms. Liu, you talked a little bit about traceability and love to hear a little more about that, and maybe how that might tie to other trends or products or opportunities that we might hear from you about the expansion of protein trades. So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
好的，谢谢您给我这次机会。中冶集团呢是建立了一个特别庞大的追溯体系，因为中国政府现在对很多产品它是有溯源的要求，一个方面是保证质量，一个方面是保证它这个整个产业链的一个安全。这个我们其实在其他的领域做了一些非常有益的尝试，我们在东南亚的领域和欧洲，我觉得这方面比美国的产品做得好。为什么？刚才我听了前面几位发言人的发言，其实我特别有感触。就是我个人的感觉，就是因为我是从国内派到美国来工作的，我在中国从事了很多年的食品的相关的工作，所以我感觉中国现在正在经历一个消费升级，它从温饱向小康或者是更高层级的这种转变消费是非常的明确的，就是一些非常有特色的、非常高端的这种产品，在中国现在是非常的受欢迎，非常有市场。所以现在比如说我们做的溯源做的比较好的马来西亚的燕窝，它是在马来西亚就贴了这个溯源的标签回中国去卖，向中国消费者致信，这是中冶集团在马来西亚贴标，然后确保它是从马来西亚的原产地来的，然后它的品质也是经过我们检验的，所以它就是给消费者带来非常大的信心，这个非常的成功。包括东南亚很多的农产品，您都想象不到，西瓜它都能贴着标签到中国去进口， 所以我觉得美国啊，其实地大物博，它有非常多的产品，但是我们想象美国的产品能有什么特别的像欧洲一样，我能想到橄榄油啊，我能想到奶酪啊，能想到奶粉啊，乳制品。但是美国呢，它这种特色化的东西强调的不是特别的突出，不像日本和欧洲，我觉得这方面好像比美国的产品要更深入人心一些。所以我觉得这个我们也特别希望跟美方一起把我们特别有特色的高品质的产品带到中国市场去，介绍给中国的消费者，通过各种的手段，溯源也好，通过其他的方法都行，我觉得这个还是有很大的合作空间的。谢谢。
Thank you, Ms. Liu. During our opening ceremonies, Governor Holden made the comment about not only is agriculture just about trade and business, but it's also the bedrock of a healthy U.S.-China relationship. Krista, would you talk a little bit about your perspective on that comment and maybe ideas that you have on how we can expand our protein trade and stabilize this significant bilateral relationship by doing it from a business perspective and maybe removing the politics from it, if that's even possible?
Oh, how I wish taking the politics out of this would be possible. If I could wave a magic wand, I would certainly do so. And I think all of us on this panel from both countries would do the same. I see a lot of smiles and nods. Really, because of politics, I think we haven't had a real trade agreement in about 12 years. And it really would help to be able to just think about business, to think about consumer needs, and those who can supply those needs. And I think that we have a lot more in common than we do differently when it comes to feeding people. And I think that if we could really get down to the heart of what it takes to make sure that folks have a healthy and a environmentally friendly produced supply of food, if that truly was the motivation, I think this group of people and some of our colleagues could get in a room together, if that was possible, on a larger Zoom call and work out some of these differences, because we know that the Chinese people, want good, nutritious food. We know that the U.S. can help supply that. We want that partnership to happen. So I hope that some of the politics, some of the rhetoric will be lowered, and that we can really talk about what's best for our two great nations. And working together, we're going to accomplish a lot more for our populations than we are going head to head through politics, but really looking at the needs of both countries and helping to feed people is at the heart and soul, I think, of what all of us want to do.
Krista, well stated. Men, make a note. We're going to follow up with Krista and take her up on her idea. We need to put that Zoom panel together quickly and get this done from a business perspective. Mr. Luan, how about any ideas on how we can expand protein trade?
刚才这个 Krista 女士讲的，我非常赞同。这个本来就是个贸易，应该说中美两国在贸易的互补性上非常强，啊，这个中国的市场非常之大，美国的农产品应该说比较优势也非常的大。这两国在农产品的合作，包括蛋白质的合作，它是符合最基本的经济规律的，啊，如果没有政治，那这个就是非常天然啊。所以从我们的角度来讲，两国的这个关系啊，应该还是要建立起一种面向未来合作共赢的这么一个良好的双边关系，为贸易创造一个非常好的环境和条件。这一点还是非常重要的，非常重要的。我们都经历了这个贸易摩擦，大宗农产品受它的影响还是非常的大的，价格波动非常剧烈啊。所以这一点，也就是这个作为从中粮集团来讲，我相信我们的美国伙伴朋友们这方面的感触还是非常深的啊。所以衷心的希望啊，我们两国能够建立这么一个互利共赢的稳定的啊这个合作关系啊，为我们农产品的合作创造一个非常好的环境。第二点呢，我觉得中国的市场很大，还是欢迎，也是希望美国朋友伙伴跟中粮集团一起，我们深入到市场的一些细分市场啊，一些高端的 这个中高端的市场，我们共同来调研消费者的需求、消费者的口味啊，这个根据消费者升级啊，中国人的口味啊，我们来共同的来推动这些这个高端的食品啊进入到中国市场。中粮在这方面一直这个有它的独特的优势，在这方面我们愿意发挥这方面的优势啊，谢谢。
Thank you and agreed. And let's see what we can do to put something together. Polly, to you for your thoughts.
I have very little to add what has already been said and agree wholeheartedly, but the one thing that I would add is that from my perspective as a sociologist, trade stabilization and good business relationships depend heavily on respect between parties. And if we could ascribe to the vision that's been stated here already, and as a fundamental effort, we could work very hard to understand and respect our cultural differences, not to treat each other necessarily as we wish to be treated, but as others wish to be treated, given who they are and where they come from, and focus on our shared needs. I believe that the trust that results from that kind of respect facilitates trade every day. So that's the only thing I would have to add that's of substance. Thank you.
Jim, you're muted. Jim, you're muted.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Wan, same question of you. How can we improve our bilateral relationships and improve our protein trade opportunities between our countries from a business perspective? Any thoughts on that?
好，我完全赞同这个伯包赫尔登先生的观点。我也十分这个同意，克里斯塔哈登首席执行官和农业部长的建设性的意见。正如我刚才在演讲中提到的，中美农业的良好合作，包括农产品贸易的稳定发展，惠及两国企业和民众，关系的是国计民生。中美两国企业携手共进、合作共赢，是我们两个企业的共同责任和义务。这个中国农发集团呢，十分愿意在现有的业务的基础之上，进一步拓展中美双边农业领域的合作的广度和深度。我认为呢，主要是咱们两国的企业在如下4个方面进行一些探索。一是持续的完善供应链，以打造安全可靠的动物蛋白供应为核心，持续完善畜牧业生产资料的供应链，植物蛋白质的这个进口贸易的体系、冷链物流保障体系以及对外供应链合作机制等方面的建设。这是第一。第二，加大科技研发，加强相关蛋白供应链的科技研发，围绕动物蛋白安全可追溯体系建设、产品定制化需求等方面进行探索研究，确保提供蛋白产品的质量安全。三是加强渠道建设，持续推进蛋白贸易渠道的多元化建设，确保蛋白供应链的稳定运营。在动物用蛋白方面，中国农发集团这个还有在这个现有的基础上还可以去持续的扩大。这个在人用的蛋白方面呢，我们前面也讲过，就是以水产品肉类乳制品为主我们还进一步扩大我们这个量。当然这些是仅仅的是一些我们现在做的一些工作了。我们希望呢，这个在这个基础上进一步的深度的合作。我们这个中国农发集团呢，刚才讲了有5大的业务的板块了。我们的农业、 渔业、畜牧业，我们的机械装备，我们有很多的这个产品啊，有很多的产品，所以在这些方面我们还可以进一步的扩大合作。第四是呢，加强资本合作，加强呢相关动物蛋白供应链体系的海外投资，通过强化资本关联，构建长期稳定安全的国际化动物蛋白供应体系。谢谢主持人。
Mr. Wan, you're right. The opportunity to collaborate in R&D and capital sources is such a fundamental opportunity for us. So I welcome those comments. Thank you. Bill, turn to you for comments on this topic as well.
Thank you, Jim. I'm going to refer to something that Mr. Yuan said from COFCO. The Chinese middle class is approaching 400 million people. The United States' entire population is around north of 330 million people. And when you look at the facts, America's farmers and ranchers, pork producers, we are business people. And we look at the facts of geography. The United States has millions and millions of hectares of productive land. We have a transportation system and we have modern production systems. We are always going to be able to produce more milk, soybeans, corn, pork, beef, wheat, you name it, than can be consumed in the United States. And China, particularly Western China and interior of China, is very dry. And China has a very large population, nearly 1.4 billion people. And so I think it just makes good business sense that in economics, the concept of comparative advantage, each nation or person produces what they're very good at and then conducts trade with others around the world. And that's really what we're interested in the United States. And speaking on behalf of America's pork producers, that's how I would approach this, Jim, is the facts are the facts. And we're going to grow it, we're going to produce it, and we're going to produce more than we can consume. Therefore, we are going to be traders. And we're interested in trading with people that are interested in trading with us.
Sounds like, Bill, I can have you be part of Krista's panel that we're going to put together.
Thank you.
Ms. Liu, do you have any thoughts as well on how to improve our bilateral relationships?
您好，我是觉得特别赞同前面几位嘉宾的说法。我觉得中粮的栾总说出了大家的心里话。其实中美之间的就农产品贸易而言，它天生就是一个互补的关系。就是我们这边的产品，中国很需要，中国这个对美国的产品其实是非常的渴望。经常有客户来找到我们，问我们可不可以买这样买那样，他们都没有什么特别好的渠道。我觉得想要促进这个贸易呢，一方面是一个大的流程，像刚才万总说的那些流程啊，包括 Bill 他们说的这个一个大的整个产业链的环境的这个，还有一个从我们的角度比较小的环节，就是跨越一个语言的障碍和一个法规的障碍，这个也是一个阻碍大家去贸易的一个顺畅进行的一个比较重要的方面。因为中美两国的政府都会对很多的产品有一些的要求和限制，你不是限制，就是你必须得提前做一些申请和备案的这种要求。但这个东西其实对中国企业而言，美国的要求对他们而言是陌生的，也是有语言方面的障碍。对美国企业而言，中国的这些要求可能就更是就是很难理解。所以我觉得就是这个方面的这个障碍和这个屏障是我们需要去共同努力把它跨越掉。但是它其实是个技术上的问题，这个其实是我们可以为大家做一些服务的。这个是我想表达的一点点小观点。谢谢。
Excellent, thank you. I know we have some questions, but I'm looking at the time and we're running a little behind schedule. So I really appreciate the six of you joining us today, this evening, for this distinguished panel. Great comments and feedback and some follow-up opportunities. Of course, Krista, thank you for that suggestion. And again, thank you for your time. For those that are on, the participants, Min, I think we're going to take a maybe a 3-minute break instead of a 5-minute break and try to reconvene in 2 or 3 minutes if we can. Min, do you want to jump back on and give us some guidance on the next segment, which is adoption of new technologies? Min?
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, our distinguished guests. Thank you for your time. Now you may take a break. If you would like to listen, you can mute and turn off your camera if you want. The panels are all lined up for the next segment. So Jolena, let's have a 3-minute break. Thank you.
范总您好，我们要调试一下吗？
没有问题，现在不用，挺好。
好的。然后之前让杨处跟您沟通过，可能董事长有个重要活动，还要发完言之后还要提前离场。对，
没有问题。
好的，好的。
现在请第二个环节的嘉宾 ，please the guest for the second segment, please turn on your camera on mute. And Rob.
It's not letting me turn on my camera.
Who this one?
Eric.
Oh, Eric, hold on, sorry.
Same for me, man. You guys are controlling the camera.
Oh, okay, hold on. Are you able to turn on now, Eric?
Yep.
Okay, everyone else?
Hey, Eric.
Yes, I'm ready. Hi.
Okay, Ms. Wen, Mr. Wang, and Mr. Lu, and Daniel. Jim, your panel is ready. I just want to mention Ms. Wang. Yeah, please go ahead. You may start.
All right, great. Well, we're running a little behind on time, so on your screen are the names and the titles and roles of each of the individuals. It's great to have this group of 6 panelists join us today. I'm not going to do the introductions. We'll let you do that yourselves, but we're going to go like we did before and start with Ms. Wen to give her perspective on some of the opportunities for adopting
Jim,
new technology.
Jim,
Yes.
sorry, we're going to start with Rob, actually.
We're going to start,
So
okay, left to right.
yeah.
It changed the order on me. Okay. Well, Rob, guess what? You're up first. Good to see you again, Rob. And we'd love to have your thoughts and comments about adopting new technology. So Rob, I'm going to turn it to you.
Great. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. So first of all, let me start out by thanking everybody. It's a great event and I appreciate the opportunity to participate. I think it's especially important, that we seek opportunities to collaborate given the, the political pressures. And personally, I can think of nothing more important than talking about food security and its contributions. So just to illustrate the importance of food security at a high level, I think everyone realizes that despite all of our progress, still about 800 million people are malnourished. And, frankly, that includes, people living in both the US and China. And as we think to the future, demographics tell us the population is going to touch 10 billion by 2050. And that's certainly going to pressure, our existing production and distribution systems. I think another important point is the role and the impact that agriculture has on greenhouse gas emissions. A lot of estimates say that about 25% of the world's greenhouse gases originate from, crop and animal agriculture. And so, there's clearly an opportunity to improve on that. And I think new technology offers a great promise. And finally, I think just from a sheer business perspective, when you look at the contribution that agriculture, food production, food processing, food retail plays in both of our countries, it's a significant source of economic growth and employment. So, I think the exciting news, the good news is that there's an incredible set of advances in technology. As a scientist, I would tell you that the advances in biology, the advances in digital agriculture are tremendous. We've never had an opportunity like this. And I think basically this is a very special time. And the US and China as leaders in global research by working together can tremendously accelerate this progress. So when we talk about data science, just as a couple of examples to bring it home, I mean, today, we have sensors and satellites that are giving us precise monitoring of weather and crop production. We have imagery and sensor techniques that are allowing us to inspect individual livestock and individual crops, from a great distance and report on that. And we now have the ability with machine learning and other digital decision-making algorithms to allow farmers to take a massive amount of information and process it. Of course, on the biology side, where I've spent most of my career, we're seeing basically a rewrite of the rules on plant breeding, and breeders today can create new combinations with more traits and attributes than ever before and higher yields. Biotechnology, which has now been around for over 2 decades, gives us a new tool to add, important agronomic and nutrition traits. The brand new technology of gene editing, which scientists all around the world and certainly being championed by scientists in the US and China, offers, I think, even more opportunity to change and improve both livestock and crops with a technology that offers broad accessibility, lower regulatory barriers, and I think the potential for lower cost delivery of exciting new products. And finally, the last area I would highlight is for years, our soil have been mysteries, but today with the mega sequencing technologies, we can sequence soils from all around the world, understand the unique microbe relationships, and set up opportunities to optimize microbe-plant interactions to, again, mitigate disease and improve yields. I think when we think about these technologies, a couple important points come out. First of all, these technologies aren't just US, they just aren't Chinese technologies. These are technologies that have incredible impact for farmers around the world. And, in my experience now, millions of smallholder farmers across Asia and Africa are using cell phones and computers to obtain weather information, agronomic information, marketing information to make better decisions. And similarly, these advanced biotech and breeding tools are being adopted across the globe. In this last year, there were nearly 500 million acres of biotechnology crops planted across the world, and over half of those were grown by smallholder farmers in developing countries. I think the other thing that's important when we think about these technologies is that they increase productivity and yields, but that provides multiple benefits. First of all, more yield, more food means food security. Second, more profitability means the ability to reduce rural poverty. And then the other important thing is we become more and more focused on the environmental impact and the sustainability of farming, is that by producing more food on each acre or each hectare with less inputs, we're dramatically rewriting the opportunity to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And so we not only have the benefit of improving yields, but also creating the opportunity to dramatically reduce the amount of land needed for food production. And that can have a huge impact on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Now, I know we're going to have opportunity later to discuss what are the things we can really do, what makes a difference. So I'll just mention these briefly, and then we can come back and discuss them. But there's three things that are top of mind that I think really can make a huge difference. First of all, as a scientist, there's a tremendous opportunity for both countries to reinvigorate their relationships and accelerate scientific exchange through both training and collaborations, but also focusing on joint research and commercial development opportunities that can really increase private investment. But I would tell you that in my experience, the science barriers are probably the least important. In my experience, the non-scientific barriers have had a huge impact on delaying the adoption of technologies. And I think two things we need to do. We need to really rethink now, after 20 years of experience with these advanced biotechnology methods, whether now is not the appropriate time to simplify and streamline regulatory approvals. And harmonizing regulations could dramatically reduce the cost and speed up the time by which consumers have access to these technologies. And in my career, I'm too familiar with how both of our countries have used phytosanitary regulations and some obscure bureaucratic steps on both sides to delay unnecessarily products in the marketplace. And the last thing I think is important for us to talk about is ensuring that as we bring this new science into the marketplace, whether it be advanced biology or digital agriculture, that we have public support. And I think it's critical that we invest resources in communication directly to the public, and particularly communications that reach the public directly through social media, so that some of the misinformation and distrust that's been created can be addressed directly. So with that, I appreciate again this opportunity, and I look forward to a more detailed discussion. Thank you.
Well, Rob, you packed a lot into those 5 or 6 minutes. That great vision, and love the passion. So thank you for that. Look forward to hearing some of your answers, some of the questions on the back end of this. With that, I'm going to turn to Miss Wen and from Peking University to hear a little bit about what she's seeing in big data. Miss Wen.
Yes, thanks, Jim. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank for the United States Heartland China Association for their kind invitation. I'm glad to attend this conversation about the use of new technologies, because I believe now it is time for a second honeymoon between agriculture and the data technology. Next slide, please. You may ask, when is the first honeymoon? Actually, in the very early development stage of human society, agriculture and the data has experienced a spring of mutual promotion and common development. Agriculture was born from the beginning with the collection and use of data, and the birth and development of astronomy, mathematics, and statistics is also inseparable from the driving force of agriculture problems. For example, geometry have originated from the need for marrying farmland, and the basic ideas of modern statistics such as analysis variance, hypothesis testing, and MLE are all come from analyzing the agriculture data of Rothamsted Agriculture Experiment Station, which is the oldest agriculture research institute at the United Kingdom. As the population, next slide, please. As the population continues to grow rapidly, increasing agriculture production to feed the global population had been the most important challenge facing agriculture for a long time. Therefore, biotechnology and chemical technology were booming in developed countries, and with the popularization of the Green Revolution, they played dominant roles in global agriculture technology during that period. Since 1980s, as the global positioning systems started to be applied to manage farms in the United States, impacts of information technology on agriculture was expanding, and precision agriculture became the standard technology for large modern farms, which is mainly supported by the use of computer and geographical information systems. Nowadays, the new generation of information technology represented by the big data and in artificial intelligence have been widely applied in various industries. On the other hand, the cost of the Internet of Things, computing power, and the smart devices has dropped significantly. Meanwhile, missions of agriculture development has also changed because it need to cover food security, adaptation to climate change, and sustainability. The data-driven digital agriculture starts to play a more and more important role in today's agriculture technology. Next slide. Vigorously developing the digital economy has become a global consensus, especially after the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic. The foundation of a digital economy is to use digital technology to transform our physical space into the digital space. In China, according to relevant documents issued by the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China and the State Council, data has become a new type of production factor and the core strategic resource of the digital economy. Next slide. So now it comes to the second honeymoon for agriculture and data technology. Because to develop the digital agriculture, we must establish a closed loop of data perception, learning from data, and value realization. Next slide, please. We are facing the challenges and the opportunities at the same time. Acquisition of agriculture data is very time-consuming, and the format structure of data differs greatly from different sources. And control of data quality is also hard because the skill level of the practitioners is usually not very sufficient. In addition, data silos is very common, which causes wasted resources and inhibited productivity, while meantime also increasing the difficulty in value realization of the agriculture data. I started to work in this area since 2014. And I have both worked in industry and academia, and currently I'm doing research at Peking University. Good news is we are making progress little by little. Especially now, China is running the rural revitalization strategy, which can be expected that in the near future, more resources and talents will go to the rural area, and the agriculture industry will have more chance and strength to benefit from the application of new technologies such as big data and artificial intelligence. As for the collaboration between China and the US in terms of agriculture data technology, I believe collaboration in scientific research is always a good point to start. And in addition, as adaptation to climate change has become the common interests between China and the US, and recently, China just has formulated a plan for carbon neutrality and carbon peaking. More communication and the share of technology and the products in this field would be feasible. Moreover, agriculture science and technology talents are in great demand in China. Thus, collaboration, I believe collaborations on education and talent trainings are also desirable. So next slide, that's it. I will just start with these remarks. And this is the photo I took yesterday outside my office and the beautiful spring at the campus of Peking University. And I hope the spring of China-US cooperation can also come as soon as possible, especially in agriculture data technology area. Thank you.
Lynn, thank you. And I love the second honeymoon analogy. That's fabulous. And looking forward to more comments and questions later in the presentation. I'm going to now turn it to Eric from Syngenta. Eric, love to hear your thoughts on opportunities to see adoption of new technologies.
Thank you, Jim. And it's an honor to be on this panel with such distinguished agricultural science leaders, including Rob Fraley, who all of you know is a key father of agriculture biotechnology and a huge contributor to global food security. So thank you very much for having me. I'm the CEO of Syngenta. Syngenta is a Swiss headquartered company with 256 years of history. 3.5 years ago, we were purchased by ChemChina. And today we're a very global company. Our seeds headquarters is in Illinois, where I am today, but we have now very big operations in China. Just to give you a sense, when ChemChina bought us 3.5 years ago, our sales in China were $300 million out of our $14 billion sales. Today, we are $7 billion of sales in China out of our $24 billion of sales. So we've gotten much bigger globally and gotten much bigger in China. And one of our goals is to be a bridge between the US and China and the rest of the world of agriculture. And we really enjoy being a global company, and we really enjoy being a significant player in the Chinese market. What I want to do is I want to first just tee up, just add a little bit more to what Ms. Wen and Rob said about the importance of agriculture technology today to the world. As Rob said, a growing population that needs to be fed. And with climate change, we're seeing increased challenges to farmers. The weather extremes that we're seeing now are unprecedented. As you know, in China, the flooding last year was horrendous. We've seen massive droughts and wildfires in Australia, now replaced by massive flooding in Australia. We've seen the highest temperatures ever in Europe and droughts and just crazy weather extremes in the US, all kinds of crazy weather that makes it much more difficult for farmers. So they need the technology to be able to have a good crop, good yields, despite weather extremes. And so we need to adapt agriculture to climate change, but we also need to mitigate climate change. As Rob said, we have to be part of the solution to taking out the 25% of greenhouse gas emissions that come from agriculture. We need to drop that towards zero. And we can do that with the fantastic technologies that are coming out, but only if we work closely together between the US and China, where the leading agriculture technology development is happening, between companies, big established companies like the Syngenta Group and COFCO and others, but also with the startups that are bringing really exciting new technologies. We need to collaborate with governments, with institutes, and with NGOs where it makes sense. And there's never been a more exciting time. Rob talked about biotechnology now on 500 million acres and significantly enhancing yields and protecting crops. Well, now, in addition to traditional biotechnology, where we've taken genes from another organism, we now have gene editing to precisely edit the genes of existing plants. And China is a leader in gene editing technology, and the US is also very advanced, and together we can have great advances in agriculture and gene editing. And Syngenta is very committed to that. We also have RNA technology, and it's already being adopted in seeds, and we'll see it in crop protection products, where, like with vaccines, you're able to use RNA technology to do something very precise in pest control. And biologicals, the advancement now in biologicals to complement synthetic chemistry for pest control and for stimulating plants to grow under drought conditions or other challenges. And then you add to that the digital capacities that are unlocking advances in research through artificial intelligence, more precise breeding capabilities, and then applications in the marketplace, whether it's helping farmers to pick the right seeds to plant, when to plant them, when to sow, what crop protection products, what nutrition to use, and even drone spraying. Today, Syngenta Group has 200 facilities in China where we're spraying fields with drones and using imaging to know where to spray and how to spray. So we significantly reduce the amount of chemistry used, but we better protect the crops. And one of the most amazing things to me and most exciting is now the ability with digital to link consumers all the way back to the farm and the food that they're buying. In China, we've developed something we call MAP centers or farmer solution centers, where we provide everything that a farmer needs, from soil testing to explaining to them what the best crops they should plant, seeds, crop protection, crop nutrition, everything. And then we buy back the outputs, and then we make sure we get those to the right downstream players, the food companies and the retailers. We are now selling 28 products on retail shelves that consumers can buy: strawberries, apples, oranges, which have the MAP logo and a QR code that the consumer scans and sees a picture of the farmer, when the product was picked, and sustainability data. That's happening in China. It's not yet happening anywhere else in the world, but that traceability is happening today. And it's very exciting. And it's the core thread that goes through the whole value chain that will drive sustainability, quality, and affordability and health. So we see tremendous opportunities, tremendous challenges, but great excitement with the modern technologies.
Eric, fascinating. We ought to get your playbook, and going from 300 million to 7 billion is phenomenal. And we ought to be replicating that both ways between our countries. That great thoughts and observations. Thank you. Mr. Wang, I'm now going to ask you to give some opening comments as well. So I'll turn the microphone to you, Mr. Wang.
王总，您现在是静音。是的。好，现在可以了。王总，您可以说呀。
那个是我说的是吧？那个我是呢，华谊农科的一个创始人，做农业企业的，却是畜牧企业的。那么今天呢，各位领导、各位女士、先生们、朋友们、女士们，大家好。非常荣幸的应邀参加这个中美圆桌论坛以贸易这个商业对话。目前呢，中国已经全面开启了“十四五”规划的建设的新的征程，我国将进入新的发展阶段，一个最好的时期，百年不遇的一个好的时期。所以我们在新的发展理念的指引下，构建了新的发展格局。在此举办这次论坛会，这个意义非常重要，加深了互相了解、互相这个深度的交流，达成了更多的，我觉得积极的对这个整体我们的友谊，包括的将来对外的这个友好，进行了一个推动作用。我这个公司呢叫华谊公司，成立1982年，是一家以家禽养殖、食品加工 还有养殖设备，就是养殖设备，包括饲料生产、粮食仓储、有机肥生产等6大产业为一体的一个现代化产业集团，是农业产业化国家级龙头企业，中国驰名商标，也是高新技术企业。那么这个企业呢，是我既是创始人，又是这个董事长，走了39年。我们这个公司呢，始终以人才创新为支点，对标国际、国内这科技的前沿，加大现代化发展模式的创新力度，致力于高品质、高标准的体系建设和推广。那么第一呢，这多少年来，我们坚持以人才创新的模式，积极创新人才管理机制，不断的加大对人才培养的力度，与多所高校，特别是中国农业大学、河北农业大学，还有很多大学进行合作，搭建了多个省部级以上的这个平台，提升了科技水平和科研成果的转化力度。我们自己呢，也通过大学去培养这个人才，有建了华语班，自己又建了华语大学，在人才培养模式上，让我们的华语的文化呀薪火相传，这种文化在一代代代传，把人才的优势转化为高质量发展的内生动力。那么第二呢，我们在氮基2种引繁推的模式上不断的应用创新。那么华谊公司作为国家级的首批氮基两反库存基地，每年从爱瓦州、美国海兰公司引进组袋机10万套。那么引进了以后，我们进行引繁推一体化作业，年可向每年社会提供2.5亿只产品出机。产品包含了具有国际领先水平的遗传潜力的海蓝品种，也有这个罗曼品种2大系列品种，发挥了垂直传播疾病净化完美的优势。每一代都保持了在这一代次上增加了2个鸡蛋的遗传发展潜力，进一步推动了氮基产业发展的高效和两种化。那么第三呢，我们在氮基标准化养殖集成与示范，为使这个海蓝基的种鸡的性能发挥到最优势，出鸡的品质更加好，我们公司呀搞了23个养殖基地，分布在河北、重庆、江西还有东北3省，利用高山植被打造自然的这个生物天然屏障，构建了完善的生物安全体系，进行了科学免疫减负。我们主要在减负，通过生物安全，主动开展了这个动物疫病的净化，率先推广了应用本胶笼规模化的养殖技术，创建了标准化、自动化氮种鸡的饲养模式。我们创立高产氮种鸡本胶饲养的生产管理的这种规范。我们与美国的海蓝公司共同用营养配方的系统，创新利用可持续精准营养的解决方案，充分发挥了优良这种品种的遗传潜力，提高了整体的生产性能，节约了饲料成本。我们做到了科学高效的养鸡，同时得通过精细化的营养、精细化的环控、精准的饲喂，让这个雏鸡的生活更好，使其遗传性能发挥的更加潜力更大化。那么中国是发展中的农业大国，发展的潜力巨大，特别是今年21年中央1号文件对我们中国的农业未来指明了方向。借此中美农业圆桌论坛贸易与商业对话的这个契机啊，我仅代表我这个公司或我们这个行业， 对未来产业发展的提几点建议，供大家参考。希望中美双方创造更好、更多的合作平台，完善农业技术创新和推广体系，促进农业技术人才交流，为农业企业、农业生产提供及时的、精准的农业信息，推动农业技术研究成果共享转化这种机制，用工业化的模式实现现代产业高质量发展。那么第二呢，希望中美双方，我们企业与企业之间共同携起手来，共建食品安全体系，完善农产品从农场到餐桌上的监管流程和标准创建，保障人民生活的健康与安全。第三，坚持农业生态化、绿色可持续发展，统筹资源环境承载能力、畜产品供给保障能力和养殖废弃物资源利用的协同对畜禽产品环境保护，实现农业可持续发展。那么第四，坚持互利合作，加强沟通和交流，推进农产品深加工，共创农业产业品牌，提升农产品品牌利用率和经济效益。那么最后呢，感谢各位。华裔呢将以开放的胸怀、全球的视野，就是分享的心态，更强烈的责任感，去贯彻新的发展理念，坚持创新驱动发展，不断加深两国之间的合作和交流，为中美两国农业技术的创新提出贡献，达到我们的双赢的目的。最后呢，预祝我们这次的会议圆满成功，也得益于会务组给我这次的机会，让我分享了我们大家的智慧和快乐。谢谢。
Mr. Wang, and thank you. The comment about more communication and opening up more communications is so critical. And hopefully this event tonight is only the beginning of many more opportunities for us to communicate. And secondly, I'm fascinated by the Highland chicken and that breeding program. And hopefully we'll have opportunity to bring those chickens to the US and start having them lay eggs here in the US. So fascinated to hear about that and love to learn more. So thank you. At this time, I'm going to turn to Daniel to give some perspective as well. And Daniel, your opening comments?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel Koppel. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of Prospera. First of all, thank you very much for having me. It's a great honor to be with some of the other speakers here. So first of all, a little bit about us. Prospera is a machine learning company focused on in-season decision-making. And we like to think of ourselves as hardware or sensor agnostic. We look at multiple data types and think more about the problems we're trying to solve. So we look at what we think are like big bottlenecks and big challenges in growing, namely irrigation, fertilization, and spraying. And we try to figure those out using machine learning and computer vision, or today more generalized called AI. We're a team of about 90 people. The R&D is based in Tel Aviv, Israel. I'm based in California in the Silicon Valley. We have a team in the Midwest and in Mexico, but we also work in Brazil and expanding to Europe as well later this year. So maybe a few words about sort of adoption and how sort of from a startup's perspective, you could look at like the relation between US and China. So first of all, all the other speakers talked about digital ag. This is what we do on our day-to-day. And I agree with everyone. It's a really exciting time for many reasons. First, on the most basic level, just the fact that digital is allowing the democratization of ag. So anybody can learn with their mobile phones or laptop how to grow, and just having communication. That's like a great first base layer. And I think we're seeing this more and more in the last 10 years. A lot of the more basic tools have come out there. So anyone can really learn about sort of how to grow or see basic information like satellite information, etc. I think as we advance and more sort of AI capabilities come into the game, I think all the world will be able to gain advantage of that. I mean, if you look at like, I'll give a sort of simplified analogy, but if we look at like an autonomous car, a car shouldn't mind too much if it's driving in Beijing or in Manhattan. And I think crops, while they're extremely complex, you know, they will gain from the fact that machines will be smarter and smarter and know how to sort of help and how to help with at least the practices that humans take part of. I think, yeah, from our experience, we see even like practical use cases today. We've seen like how learning how to irrigate in the desert of Israel helped with the same algorithms, growers in Sinaloa, Mexico, grow their crops there as well. So I think as machines get smarter, this is just going to be able to help the global economy to grow in a smarter way. And we're seeing, you know, the initial signs of this today. And I think, you know, beyond the basics, this is going to be extremely exciting. I think as sort of, you know, I would call it the science of growing gets more established. I think digital ag will take a big piece there as well. If so far it was more like a generational thing where the father teaches his son how to grow and everybody's more isolated, the fact that everybody will be connected is gonna help a lot. And I think we're seeing this today, how, you know, we had a grower we spoke to last week who said, like, my son thinks he can grow everything with his mobile phone, and maybe the older generation didn't see that. Well, the fact that digital ag is coming into play, I think that's going to take a big effect. And then also the way to use digital ag, I think today is there's quite a large spectrum that it's going to support, right? From the more advanced sort of Dutch growers that are really sophisticated and will be able, like, from my perspective, in the future, they're essentially going to become to be data scientists, to people in developing countries that maybe don't even know how to read and write, where today, you know, there's applications that based on like emojis or different things like that can very, in a simple way, sort of give feedback to people in the field and help them grow, even if they don't have the more advanced capabilities, or really if they can't even read and write, and many growers in the developing world don't know how to do that. And so I think tech, or as we call it here today, digital ag is enabling that. And then maybe lastly, I think a great piece here, and I'll talk from the startup perspective. I mean, I myself, I'm a tech guy. Our company is a tech company. You know, building a channel is going to be very difficult, and that's where I think, you know, probably, I don't know if it's going to come from tech companies, probably not. And agriculture, I would say in general, the agriculture value chain is just very complex. It's very different from geography to geography, right? Like the US commodity row crops are very much sort of work through the ag retail channel, whereas in like Brazil, you have mega growers, and that sort of created a more direct approach. And China is like a combination, but mainly lots of small growers, and just building a channel that will enable tech companies like ourselves to get to market is going to be crucial for sort of the local market to create. And I think it comes together, right? On the one hand, it's going to be a big challenge. On the second hand, once, you know, these channels would be created, there'll be a lot to leverage by a lot of tech companies in the world. So I'll pause there and just say I'm excited to be on the board and happy to continue the discussion.
Daniel, great, and love the comments on digital ag and some of the expansion there, and look forward to some of your comments later on the other things we're going to talk about. At this point, I'm going to turn to Mr. Liu to provide some comments. Mr. Liu?
Yes.
陆老师可以开始讲了。
好，各位嘉宾，大家上午好，非常高兴能够参加今天这个圆桌会议。那么我是来自河南省农业科学院一个研究人员，我今天要给大家介绍一下我们黄淮地区主要农作物生产和育种的一些大概的概况。下一个幻灯片。喂，听到下一张幻灯片啊。 我们黄淮地区呢，大概就包括上一张。那么黄淮地区大概就包括河南省、山东、安徽、江苏北部、山西、陕西的南部、河北南部这一片。为什么要给大家介绍这一片呢？因为我觉得这一片的主要的农作物，它的产量可能是周年的产量可能是世界上最高的。那么我们这里主要农作物，冬季就是冬小麦，大概占了全国的77%。那么夏季主要播种的作物有玉米、大豆和花生。那么在这个区域，玉米的播种面积大概占了全国的38.5%。那么大豆大约播种面积占全国的27%。那么花生大约占全国的52.7%左右。下一张幻灯片。那么这个地方最主要的特征就是1年2熟制，我们叫 double crop system， 就是冬季全部几乎所有的地方就是冬小麦。像河南有1亿亩耕地，那么大约有8500万亩都是种的冬小麦。那么夏季呢，主要这个作物就是玉米、花生、大豆，而且呢，我们这里主要的特点就是免耕。因为小麦收获完以后，播种的季节那么很短，农时非常紧张，只有在小麦地上、小麦的麦茬地上播种。那么我们目前呢，在这个地区以小麦、玉米1年2熟制为例，那么每年大概的平均产量能达到1公顷15吨，就是说1年1吨的，基本上小麦是1000斤，那么玉米1000斤。大概的这样的产量，应该说这种产量水平在全球范围来说，单位面积周年的产量都是比较高的。那么下一张幻灯片。那么在我们的育种方面呢，小麦的产量育种呢，可以说在全国这个区域都是领先水平的。那么主要的育种单位有我们河南省农业科学院，它的主要的育成的品种是正麦系列。那么另外还有河南省的周口市农业科学院，他们的育成的周麦系列品种，以及河南科技学院育成的百农系列品种。那么另外还有山东农科院，他们育成的山东农业大学育成的三农系列品种，还有山东省农科院育成的荠麦系列品种。那么其中呢，在2020年，3农28，就是山东农业大学育成的小麦品种的最高亩产达到了1公顷12.85吨。那么按照中国的亩是算，就是856公斤1亩。因此我们黄淮地区，尤其是河南、山东，小麦的育种水平呢，在全国甚至全球来说都是领先的。那么右边这张图片呢，大家可以看到，这主要我们比较了中国和美国三大农作物小麦、玉米和大豆这个产量。那么只有小麦的产量是高于美国的产量，而玉米和大豆的产量，那么我们就中国的产量远远的低于美国的产量水平。下一张幻灯片。好，下一张幻灯片。另外，我们河南省农科院育成的玉米品种正丹958，连续15年在全国推广面积第1位，到目前为止，大概已经累计推广面积已经超过了5500万公顷。那么这个品种呢，可以称为里程碑式的玉米育种上里程碑式的品种。那么目前美国的拜尔蒙山都还有先正达， 还有先锋在黄淮地区的育种开展的育种工作，都是以这个品种作为对照品种。另外，我们在16年河南农业大学育成的有一个品种呢，就玉丹9953，还获得了1公顷16.44吨的高产记录。那么这个记录是在生产冬季冬小麦、玉米1年2收制这个生产条件下获得了。虽然这个单产和美国的单产记录相比差距很远，但是它是在1年2收制下获得的，因此这个产量水平也是比较高的。好，下面音乐呢？另外，我们在花生育种、远缘杂交育种方面也取得了非常好的进展。那么，我们河南省农业科学院张新友院长培育的远杂9102花生品种，这个可能是世界上推广面积最大的远缘杂交种。这个品种以栽培品种，那么一个农家种和一个野生的二倍体品种的杂交获得的，它具有非常好的适应性，抗病性强。目前仍然是我们国家单个品种推广面积最大的品种。最主要的是通过这个品种以及其他的一些品种的育成，早熟品种的育成，适应了黄淮地区小麦、花生1年2收制的生产情况。在20多年前，黄淮地区花生的生育期比较长，只能1年种1季。那么通过这些早熟的抗病的花生品种培育，那么可以适应1年2收制的生产，在不影响小麦产量的情况下，又提高了油料作物的产量。那么另外，在大豆育种方面，产量育种方面，我们也取得了比较好的进展。我们团队培育的正1307，连续2年达到了1公顷4.64吨的产量，而且这种产量是在100亩的100亩的收获面积上获得的，那么大概就是6.67公顷。这也是在小麦、大豆1年2收制下情况获得的一个高产的记录。那么下一张幻灯片。但是呢，我们同时在这个区域，我们还面临着很多的挑战。就像在黄淮地区这个区域，各种旱涝、各种自然灾害频繁的发生，因此，那么对品种的抗性和生物抗性和非生物抗性都提出了很高的要求。像小麦，那么我们这里的小麦的赤霉病、还有白粉病、锈病都很厉害，玉米的穗腐病，还有大豆的根腐病，以及花生的烂果病。那么这些病害很有可能都是由于镰刀菌以及其他真菌性病害共同侵染引起的。那么我们想在这个方面呢，美国在农业的科技创新方面有很好的基础。那么我们希望中美的科学家能够合作，针对我们黄淮的这些育种上和生产上面对的问题，开展一些深入的合作研究。下一张幻灯片。那么谈到我们黄淮地区这个有一个普遍的现象，就是说我们黄淮地区大部分的农业科研人员还处在中小城市，那么就是以第4农科所为主。那么他们相对来说接受新的东西，尤其是用英语来接受世界上最先进技术，这个能力还是有欠缺。因此他们所用的研究方法和设备目前还需要进一步的提高。因此我认为，如果说我们将来中美能够在这方面合作，开展对这些农业科技人员一些职业的培训，那么来提高他们的水平，让他们能够用了现在新的技术，像人工智能啊、大数据、生物信息学等方面的从而来提高这个研究水平，来培育出更多的品种。那么我们和荷兰瓦格宁根大学曾经在中国开展过一些农业科技方面的培训，我认为是比较好的。但是它由于收费相对比较贵，而且全部用英语来讲课，因此对我们的 大多数科研人员的人还是受到限制的。因此，我们希望是将来在这个方面，中国和美国能够合作，将美国先进的技术引入，不仅仅是对国家队，而且对我们地方的科研单位也是一个很好的提高。谢谢大家。
Mr. Liu, thank you. And the Shandong winter wheat numbers are very impressive, and hopefully we can find opportunity. Maybe Eric, you can sub-license or license that and get that brought here to the U.S. So anyway, at this point, we're going to transition, and I've got a few questions, and I'm looking at the clock as well. So what I'm going to do is do a little bit of pivot here. We've got 2 questions we've asked each of the speakers to address. Rob, I'm going to start with you and maybe ask you to address both of these questions. First of all, in the opening celebration on Tuesday evening here, Wednesday morning in China, Ambassador Quinn outlined 3 major global challenges. One being producing sufficient nutrition in a sustainable way to feed the 9 to 10 billion people by 2050. And secondly was dealing with the climate volatility and the issues around the changing climate. And finally, how to prevent the spread of pandemic human and animal diseases. And based upon your experiences, maybe you can point to 1 or all 3 of those and new technologies you're seeing and innovations that might address some of that. And then secondly, maybe talk about top challenges that you see and how maybe better collaboration could address some of those challenges. And maybe it's 1 question, but I'm going to ask it as 2 to you and maybe try to speed up our process. So Rob, if you would, turn your microphone on and then maybe address those 2 questions as you see fit.
Sure. So I think the point on the pandemic diseases is an important one, and I know it was mentioned earlier, but just highlight that the exact same advanced data science tools and DNA and RNA technologies that are being used by countries around the world to create the vaccines are exactly the same tools and technologies that we're talking about here in agriculture. And the combination of the advanced breeding techniques, the gene editing and biotech are unveiling brand new solutions for insect and fungal diseases that are important. And I think I'm very optimistic about that area. Of course, the digital ag role in having sensors that allow us to do early detection of diseases and insects so that we can treat quickly and specifically are really important. I think that I'd like to spend just a couple of minutes of my time. I'm a believer that this technology can really help us boost yields and meet the food security challenges. I think it's important, though, that we emphasize how important these advances in agriculture are for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. If you think about it, the only processes on this entire planet that fix carbon are crops, soil microbes, and ocean microbes. And anything that we do with these new technologies that increases yield means that we are not only storing more carbon in the grain and the food that we want to utilize, but in the soil, and we're returning carbon to the soil. And we make agriculture more efficient. But as we take the land that we're farming today and farm it better and more efficiently with higher yields, we reduce the need to clear new land for the future. And I've seen a lot of modeling that says that if we fully use these tools, if the US and China were really leading a combined effort, we would actually be in a position by 2050 where we will meet the demand to feed the world, farming less land than we do today. And the implications of that from a greenhouse gas emissions are enormous. And so I am very proud of the impact that these tools will have for food production. But I think there's a huge opportunity to talk about these technologies and agriculture's role in mitigating climate change.
Great, agreed, Rob. Thank you, and excited about some of the new things we're seeing in that vein. to have impact on climate change. So thank you for those comments.
You're welcome.
Miss Nguyen, I'm now going to turn to you and as well ask you about maybe new technology innovations you're seeing, whether it's within your Peking University or outside, and anything that you see that we could do to have better collaboration in solving some of the challenges that are occurring in some of the ag solutions you're working on.
Thanks, Jim. In my opinion, I totally agree with Rob that adaptation to climate change is an important issue, and I believe this is the area that we could have better collaboration to solve the problem. And I used to work on the detection and attribution of climate change, and it has been confirmed that the change in extreme weathers in China is partially due to the human activities, which in terms of CO2 emissions. So we at Peking University, we have the strengths that we run the Earth simulation models, and we could simulate different scenarios and different emission conditions. And so I think we still have a lot of questions regarding how we could do in agriculture in order to adapt to the changing climate. Although we now, from this year, I think we will put more efforts in this area since we have this plan for carbon neutrality and carbon peaking by 2030, I believe. So the time is very, it's very urgent actually. So I think in this area, we could have some research collaboration, and we could also have some practice collaboration. We would be prefer to share experiences and to learn from your experiences. And I think we could also collaborate on developing some standards to measure the agricultural emissions and to measure the effect for the adaptation to climate change from the agriculture side. So that's my comments for this. Thank you.
Jim, you're muted.
From you, Jim.
Miss Nguyen, thank you. I agree that the collaboration between our two countries and solving some of these problems is one of the great things that we take away tonight. Eric, always you have such wise comments and insights, and it's tough to follow Rob in a presentation like this, but I know you'll have something that's more sage than Rob presented, so I look forward to hearing your thoughts.
No way. But what I would say, first of all, is that this is an unbelievable opportunity for both the U.S. and China to partner around technology for agriculture. Europe is clearly going away from technology in agriculture. They're not focused on outcome goals, and they don't have a good regulatory system that adopts new technology. So Europe is falling behind. U.S. and China have to be the ones that lift up the technology and make these technologies work. As Rob said, not only to help farmers deal with climate change and still get great crops, but also to sequester carbon and be a solution to climate change. And so what I recommend is we've got to have outcome goals from both countries. We've got to have ways of getting the technology to farmers. It's already happening in the United States, but in China, we have to have more of that. And I think one great example are the Syngenta Group map centers. We now have 376 map centers. 4 years ago, we had 0. So 376 centers providing full solutions to farmers. And it's not just Syngenta products and technologies. It's technologies from Sinofert, from Yara, Bayer, John Deere, others around the world, but also from Chinese companies and institutes. And what I heard tonight about Henan and other technologies, we want to bring those into these map centers and provide and make them available to farmers. And we're seeing farmers in China leapfrog from old techniques to modern tools that are world-class. But there still needs to be more regulatory reform. There needs to be adoption of biotechnology traits. Rob talked about 500 million acres today are using biotechnology traits. It's time for China to adopt biotechnology traits. It will greatly increase yields and genome editing, put in place the regulatory frameworks to enable genome editing to be commercialized in China in the coming years. And then finally, keep increasing the protection of intellectual property. And then not only will Chinese research thrive in agriculture, but global best technologies will come to China as well. So if we do those things, Chinese agriculture, like the US agriculture, can lead the world to feeding the world, but also to mitigating climate change, being a solution to climate change.
Excellent, great comments. Thanks, Eric. Daniel, I'll turn to you and see what thoughts or comments you might have relative to, you touched upon it with Prospera, but maybe anything you're seeing elsewhere outside of Prospera that you see as kind of opportunistic. And again, Daniel, you're on mute as well, so you'll need to come off mute. There we go.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm gonna sort of follow on what sort of Rob and Eric are mentioning. I think, or at least on the digital ag side, I think, first of all, taking a step back, I think that there was a big question mark, or still is a big question mark around how much the human element is important, right? Because you have climate and soil that in a specific field, they're like the fixed element of a function. And then you have like the genetics, which are important and we discussed here today. And the third piece of that function is what you actually do in the field. And that is going to be crucial. Like we're seeing it today in the use of irrigation and fertilization, that you could like just scientifically see that it's overused, and with sort of bringing in intelligent solutions, you can reduce that. And the same with chemicals, and Rob mentioned, and so did Eric, I think previously, early detection. Clearly earlier detection and prediction as well will reduce that. I'll just say, we started in greenhouses, and we didn't go to the open field. And the reason was we treated this as a mega lab. In the open field, it's such a chaotic, if you think of like growing as a sort of mathematical function, it's such a chaotic function that so much is going on there. It's really difficult to understand causality. And how much does a human element really matter? Like the big approach was genetics was the only thing that matters. And while it's super important, it was difficult to prove that. And that's why we were focused a lot on greenhouses, where you can sort of control climate and control different elements and see. And we found that it's crucial. And so when you think about sort of, growing crop on the same land, and reduction of, excess fertilizer and excess spray, I just think these types of technologies are just crucial in addition to the work we're doing on genetics. And the second piece I want to briefly say is like the connection of the two is very interesting. Part of we're working with very closely. We have a strategic partnership with Bayer Crop Science. We're also speaking to Eric's team about how do you connect the dots, right? So far it's been like digital ag and genetics. But what happens when you start tailoring a solution to genetics? So different seed or genetic some like to be stressed at this time of the season, some don't, and that sort of manipulation is going to be very interesting to see how you can sort of tailor digital ag to genetics. Now, clearly you want to get to a base level first and give people and growers the base first, but we're seeing that this is really exciting, where you can, or at least AI can do this, or machine learning can do this, give you specific recommendations based on a type of genetics that will substantially improve the use of water, fertilizer, and with computer vision, the use of chemical as well.
And I love the bridge that you're building between genetics and data, and I think it's absolutely spot on. So thank you, Daniel. And finally, Mr. Liu, any thoughts relative to technology and advancements? You touched upon a fair amount in your presentation, but any other things you'd like to have as closing comments?
好的，谢谢。我想着我们既然是中美农业圆桌会议，我们希望加强双方的合作。我们就举我做大豆的，以大豆为例，我们双方是不是可以建立起一个基金会，然后来共同设立一些科研项目，来双方的科学家共同去解决。比如说大豆的病害，像大豆包囊线虫病 （Soybean Cyst Nematode）。它是全球性的病害，如果我们中美两方的科学家共同合作去开展一些项目，去合作研究，那么将来会很好的推动这个领域的技术进步，培育出更多的品种。OK。 这就是我的建议。
Great idea and great suggestion, and really appreciate all the panelists for joining tonight. Some great observations, takeaways, and follow-up opportunities. And clearly, the first panel and this panel have given us some great guidance on we need to do more of this. We need to have more communication. We can overcome some of the past challenges by how we look forward in the future. And again, thank you everyone for joining. I'm going to turn it back to Min to give the final closing comments. Min, if you could come back on.
Thank you. I would say that there's been very loyal audience who are dying to ask one question from the very beginning. So maybe Tong Zhao, if you are still in the audience, I think you should be able to speak. If you want to ask your question right now, we're going to give you, thank you for hanging there.
Okay.
童章，你可以说话。童章，童总。Okay, well, maybe he's having a little bit of trouble. Let's see. Well, first of all, while we're waiting for him to turn back on, I want to pass on greetings from Governor Holden, who actually really appreciate your time here today. And also in the spirit of talking about climate change, he just shared that there's breaking news, there's tornado, right, that just hit. So he wants us to really acknowledge the severity, the impact on our world as we speak here. But without further ado, Jim, and I want to thank you and thank our speakers for this excellent discussion. As we told folks a lot of questions, that this is just the beginning of continued dialogue. So really thank you guys for launching this together with us. And we look forward to more collaboration, promoting more dialogue in the coming months and years. Thank you very much. And with that, we call this program close. And Jolanda, and yes, thank you, 谢谢大家。